Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this last meeting, the last day of our meeting of AGA Focal Points. Thank you very much for being here on time. So summarizing the meeting yesterday, we addressed agenda item 3 on the provision of AGA AOP services in the SAM region. We analyzed several working papers, including they presented some initiatives related to wildlife management by CARSAMPAV. We also had a presentation on the APEX program of ACI LAC. We also had a presentation on the experience of Brazil in risk management, risk-based surveillance and the methodology they apply. We also had some discussions on the status of Agripicus projects, specifically the project on planning, and we left for today agenda item 4, agenda item 5, 6, and 7. Under agenda item 4, we have 3 papers, so four papers, 2 working papers of the Secretariat, 1 information paper of the Secretariat. We also have, and it should already be posted on the website of the meeting, 2 information papers of the F3 project coordinator on ACDM, papers 14 and 15. They're posted on the website. They were posted yesterday, so we will analyze them today. And we also have an information paper, number 13, which has to do with the runway safety teams. It's available in Spanish, but for the English-speaking colleagues, we will do the translation as soon as possible. Sorry, we couldn't do it so quickly. This paper presents the project for the implementation of runway safety teams, as we discussed yesterday with you. Under agenda item 5, we don't have any papers, but we can discuss the topic. In agenda item 6, we have an information paper to be presented by Rodrigo Ribeiro from the SRV SOP. Under other matters, we can discuss any other issue, any other business in agenda item 6. And under agenda item 7, we will talk about the conclusions in our next meeting. Any comments before starting? I'm sorry, I'm coughing a little. They always tell me I shouldn't cough in the microphone. Good morning. I have a question, a technical question, Fabio. Are we going to produce a report as a result of this meeting to be sent to the States to use it as a platform and to prepare our respective reports? Yes, Mario. Since we didn't have the occasion of talking about the operation of the group, let me tell you a little about this group. Right now, we have formal groups in other air navigation areas, and these groups are related to Agripicus initiatives. For instance, many of you know SAMIG, which is the SAM implementation group, which is a group in which ATM, CNS colleagues discuss different issues regarding the implementation of the regional plan. We have the SAM AIM that sees specific issues of that area. In our case, we don't have a formal meeting to establish these issues because we have other initiatives underway. For instance, we have the panel on safety, under the same project of GREP, because we have other initiatives that are assessed as at the program and project review meetings. However, the objective of this meeting, as I said on the first day, was to have a forum where we could discuss not only the active members of the system, but also those states that are not part of the system, but are part of the region. And then to discuss issues that go beyond the scope of the regional system. Basically, those we are going to discuss today regarding capacity, efficiency, and air navigation. When you discuss those issues, you'll say, well, I don't address that issue in my country. It's another area, but in response to your question, we will have a summary of discussions. And in that summary, we would like to include the agreements reached at this meeting. And depending on those agreements, since this meeting is formally established by a higher group, it's not that we report directly to the executive committee of REPICAS or RASPA. Despite that, the specific topics that we think should be taken to another instance will be taken. For instance, our discussions on certification, we may reach an agreement at this group, but if we want these goals to be formalized, the meeting serves to submit the proposal of these goals to another instance, but we are not the ones who make that decision, because that's not clearly established in the terms of reference of this group. So I cannot prepare a report that gives conclusions and takes action. We prepare the summary, you review the report, the summary, and if there are no further comments from you, these decisions or conclusions are submitted to GREPICAS, to RASPA, or to another group that will make a decision. So with a few things that we have, there's a commitment on the side of the states that is formal. Aside from that, it's a technical meeting. It's a meeting to discuss priorities, and under other business, I will discuss with you what would be the conclusions that we are drawing from this meeting. And that's why I said yesterday, think about the problems that you are facing right now, and maybe that could be included in our work program. For instance, with wildlife, it's an old problem that has not been solved yet. So let's see if we can have a strategy to solve that problem in the next 3 years and things like that. Does that answer your question, Mario? Yes. Yes, very clear. Thank you very much. Excellent initiative. Thank you, Fabio. Pepe, you raised your hand. Yes. There's something very interesting regarding training. In my case, I think that this year I will no longer participate, as happened with the people, with our friend from Ecuador. But there are many inspectors who have retired because of age and have withdrawn from the various groups. So we know that the regional system should have a group or a system for the training of all the personnel, for instance, inspectors, experts in firefighting, or experts in wildlife or bird hazards, or runway safety. I think that many issues can be addressed and in courses in order to train the personnel, so as to renew the human resources in each state. It's just an idea. so that it can be carried out in the States, depending on the cost, of course. In other words, to see the possibility when an expert is needed, for instance, uh, the system can provide it, and to have the possibility of training the personnel in the States. We reach an age in which we cannot keep on working because the administration doesn't allow us to continue. So thank you, and sorry for the interruption. No, quite the opposite. Thank you very much for what you just said, and I'm taking due note. At the end, I'm going to make a brief presentation of these summarized issues. And what you mentioned is very important in our states. We've seen in some of our states that our inspectors are retiring, are no longer in the system, and behind them, there is a gap that needs to be filled. The regional system is not a training center per se, but the states have used the system to fill that gap that is not being filled by the training centers. So part of the mandate of the system is that, Rodrigo, if you want to add something, go ahead. But the system is willing to face this challenge. We must find the most intelligent way of doing that with the scarce resources we have. Maybe we can have a more face-to-face meetings now. I think in August that there's a meeting, a face-to-face meeting scheduled. But I think it's important to know where those gaps are in order to fill them. So I'm taking notes. And anyway, we'll discuss that again at the end, Pepe. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I just had that concern about how to train the new personnel. If the system could take some action, do it in one way or another, what would be the way to do it? I know that there is a support by many of the colleagues. They participate in certification activities in other countries, but it's also important for the country to keep maintaining the number of experts in order to carry out not only oversight surveillance, but also certification. Thank you. Thank you, Pepe. It's a joint effort. Uh, Rodrigo is talking to the director right now, so he cannot give his comments. But in addition to the system, and that's the idea of this meeting, that within the regional office, we have a hybrid structure. I represent the regular program of ICAO. The regular program of ICAO in its regional offices can provide training in the way of seminars, workshops, direct assistance, but in the regional office, I cannot create a course for a specific topic. Why? Because of what our colleague from Global Aviation Training said yesterday. There's a specific section for that. However, we know the limitations that some states have. They cannot cover the cost of GAD training courses. They have a mechanism that offers these courses through the system. So the system is a means in order to generate these skills, these competencies that are more comprehensive, that as compared to a webinar or a workshop. So the idea is to organize a program that is well structured in the system, and whatever is outside from that, we in the regular system, in the regular program, we can think about a way, maybe through the initiatives of the GATT or through external support. I was reading, many of you know that the European Union, EASA, has a project in the region, in the Latin American region. It was renewed recently. So we have the possibility of having resources from them in order in those topics in which we don't have full competency. For instance, air navigation aspects in which we may need their support. So basically, that's the idea of this meeting. And we can put it as a conclusion. For instance, the meeting recognizes we can put it in the report. The meeting recognizes that the training is a need due to the concern of several states regarding the generational gap and recommends the Secretariat to find alternatives through the system. So those are things that we can include as a conclusion for this meeting and can even serve me in for the agenda. It's not something that that Fabio is inventing. Well, you are seeing it now that you are working with Elizondo, who's the expert. Uruguay had to resort to him. So it's a real need. Uh, Although he was a part of the system, he retired and he left. And we had to resort to him because of the state knew him. He had been the director of the firefighting department. So it was a more simple. But right now, the organization in Uruguay doesn't have one. So it's a case you know of. It's real what is happening. And that's why I mentioned it. Yes, and that's the reason for the system of Uruguay. Has an industry that is not that big. You don't need 20 AGA inspectors to certify and supervise a limited number of airports. The regional system is for that. You can take 6 experts from Peru, 1 expert from Venezuela, an expert in bird hazards, another one from Brazil, and that's the idea. And the same thing with our colleagues from our English-speaking states, Guyana, Suriname. For instance, there is an airport in the AOP list. Of course, they have other airports, other needs, but they don't need a lot of personnel. So the idea is that in the region, we can support each other on these issues, but that staff must be ready and duly prepared according to the competences. So yes, we are going to take a due note of that, and we're going to place emphasis on it. Any further comments before we start? Very well then. In that case, let's start with agenda item 4. And for that, we have a couple of working papers. Let's start with number 3. Very well then. Many of you know the regional air navigation plan. As you know, one of the main mandates of GREPICAS has to do with the GARSAM air navigation implementation group for the implementation, first for the preparation of the regional plan and then for its implementation. The current regional plan has 3 volumes. The first is the first and second volumes show the facilities existing in the region that have been planned. In other words, what is it that the state offers to the international community in order to conduct international operations. And what many states do in these volumes, they present a list of aerodromes. I'm focusing on AGA specifically. Under the concept of the regional plan, it's called AOP, which is aerodrome operations, instead of AGA. So these are things of ICAO that create some confusion, but it's aerodromes basically. In this table, we show the list of aerodromes that are of an international nature. Each state publishes or presents in this list the aerodromes that they uh, commit themselves to maintain in order to enable international operations. So these aerodromes should comply with the standards and recommended practices of ICAO and comply with specific regional requirements. Right now, the regional plan does not have a specific requirement for aerodromes, but the aerodromes that are published in this list should comply with the related annexes. And that's why when the auditors go to the states, they use this list as the list to validate whether those aerodromes are certified or not, because in theory, you as states make a commitment. If I publish 2 international aerodromes in the AOP list, I undertake to certify them because the certification is a requirement, and those aerodromes in theory should comply with the standards. The reality is that we've discussed that an aerodrome, there's no aerodrome that complies 100% with the requirements, but what we expect is that these aerodromes have a system that enable safe operations. If in these aerodromes we identify that there is a deficiency that prevents compliance with the objectives of the plan, this deficiency is included in a registry of deficiencies, the famous GAND, Global Air Navigation Deficiencies Database. This GAND is a database that compiles different deficiencies with respect to the plan. These deficiencies are of 3 types. Priority U deficiency, which are urgent requirements that have direct impact on safety and require immediate corrective action. For instance, if you have an aerodrome that has a condition that affects safety directly, this deficiency has a priority U, and the states should take immediate action to solve the problem. Then we have deficiencies with a priority that are a high priority deficiencies, requirements that are necessary for the security and the safety of air navigation. And priority B are intermediate requirements necessary for regularity and efficiency of air navigation. Priority B, we don't talk so much about safety, but rather of regularity and efficiency of air navigation. That's the difference with priority A. The methodology for the deficiencies is established by the ICAO Council, and it's something currently under discussion in headquarters, because the issue of the deficiencies in regional plans seems to be a very technical issue and shouldn't be at the level of the ICAO Council. But that's how it has been established. Maybe in the past, in 2014, when the methodology was established, there was a concern by the Council in the sense that there were some states that had old deficiencies that had not been corrected, and the PERCs could not solve. So in taking them to the Council took stronger action. So I say this because see the importance of that this database has, because why it's taken to the ICAO Council and why it is addressed at the international level. As many of you know, ICAO in our region, the regional plan has been left aside in the last few years. Many of the senior colleagues know that there was a table of air navigation facilities, the FACIT tables that contain detailed information about the facilities at the aerodromes, the PAPIs, in the runways and so on. And this table allowed us to include the facilities that the states undertook to provide at the aerodrome and those that were planned in the following 5 years. For instance, if an aerodrome didn't have a PAPI or ILS, the stage undertook to provide that service. That changed, and with the change to 3 volumes, volume 2 is more simple now, where we also only list the number of aerodromes that declared by the states as international aerodromes, also the rescue category, the reference code, and the facilities of each runway. For instance, if it's a non-instrument runway, category 1, 2, 3 approach or non-precision, that's what is mentioned in there. Going back to the deficiencies, right now, fortunately, in our region, we don't have U-type deficiencies, but there are several A and B deficiencies that have not been updated. This database should work as follows. The states should enter into the GAMP portal. The focal point should have a password, and they should update the database when the deficiencies have been corrected or when an action plan has been presented. And then the regional office reviews this information and can remove the deficiency. But that has not been done for some time, and now we have a list that we want to present, and under suggested action, we want to ask the states to review the list and to get in contact with us. And we can have a virtual meeting to review each of the items in the list. And let me give you an example of the list shown below. Let's go to Argentina because it's not, no, Argentina is not in the meeting, so we'll use Brazil, if you allow me. For instance, what happened? Here, we have deficiencies that were identified, and this is important to say it, that they were identified by missions by AGA officers to the states or through reports from the industry. And since the methodology is very subjective for the identification of deficiencies, there are some deficiencies that don't seem to be deficiencies. There are deficiencies that are of an operational nature, that do not necessarily represent a deficiency to the provision of air navigation services. For instance, in the case of deficient 137 for Brazil, it shows that at the airport of Sao Paulo, there's a congested apron for the type of proposed aircraft. And this was reported 20 years ago. And at that time, IFALPA presented this comment, and the action plan proposed by the state was, in addition to the expansion of the terminals, they were going to take other action. However, nothing was done, and despite the deadline was June 2007, there was no follow-up, and it was not updated. So the operator at that time was Infraero, and maybe this is not a deficiency per se and shouldn't be here. Deficiencies in its definition, and just give me a second, let me look for the definition of a deficiency. I don't know if it's in the information paper. Just give me a second. Let me show you quickly.
The definition of the deficiency, the idea is that we have a conversation about this. I think that I have it just in English. Please give me a second, please. Okay. Well, okay, here it is, I think. Allow me one more second, please. Sorry for the excuses for the time I'm taking. Here it is. Give me a second to show it to you. The regional GREPEC has a procedures manual that was recently approved. I will pass to you the latest version. I think this is the last one. In its Appendix F, it discusses the methodology that has been approved for the notification report and identification of deficiencies, and the deficiency in its definition that it's here in Spanish and English. highlighted, it is a situation where a facility, service, or procedure does not comply with the regional air navigation plan approved by the council or with related ICAO standards recommended practices, and which has a negative impact on the safety, regularity, and or efficiency of international aviation services. So as I was telling you, even though, yes, indeed, the example that I was showing you a minute ago, even though the example that I have shown you, yes, a congested platform can have a negative impact in the efficiency of the operations. These are things that might be might happen because they happen in some periods of time and they are not necessarily part of the efficiency. So our call to you in this work that we want to do under this note is actually to be able to, through the focal point, or that this focal point should appoint another focal point to review this list and update it. There are many of these efficiencies actually that we can already withdraw. For example, install PAPI in the runway. Probably this airport doesn't even have a PAPI. Probably they already have ILS, elevate to category A. There are many things that have changed here. So the idea is that each one of you as a state, you can check your list and you can contact us so that we can update this list completely. And this is the call, or what we want to do, the objective of this working paper, now the number 3. So I'm going to open the floor for discussion. If anyone has a comment or something to say regarding this paper, regarding the efficiencies. Very well, then in such a case, what I would suggest is that in the report, maybe we can introduce something about regarding sending the list to the different states. I can send each one of your states the list. I will send it to the focal point that has been appointed for this meeting. But if you are not the ones that take care of this list because in your state this is dealt by their navigation part, please let me know so that I will be able to work maybe in teleconference sessions later on to close the deficiencies of the Gantt. Okay, and if you need, yes, sorry, yes, excuse me, but I cannot raise my hand, but I wanted to, can you show the list for Uruguay, please? Because I'm having some problem here. I having some problems with my connection. Rodrigo, I think that you wanted to say something while I'll look for the list for Uruguay. Yes, yes. Good morning, Fabio. Good morning, colleagues. No, I just wanted to say that in the system, in our system, we do not work with that. But I remember when I was in Brazil, and there was a request by the office, I think, to update this list or to see what was okay and what was wrong. And for us, it seemed something very distant, very far away on how we were actually doing things. So maybe, I don't know if now, or maybe if the colleagues from the States send their questions, their doubts, they might ask, how do I do this? Who do I send this to? What do I do? Because the ones that are working in this, and it might seem very simple and logical for us, but sometimes for the colleagues from the States, it's not that simple. It's not that clear. So I just wanted to make that suggestion. Another thing is that looking, for example, to the list of Brazil, I think that it would be easy for the colleagues to take out like the things that are like deficiencies. Many of them, it's been 20 years, many things have happened in this time, concessions, improvements in the aerodromes. Maybe it will be easy to take out those things, but I don't know if it would be that easy to evaluate new deficiencies, considering what do I put in this list, what do I introduced into this list. That might be a more difficult challenge. And I don't know if the first moment could be like our goal. Our objectives could be, first of all, clear the list, right? Because maybe to clean the list and then thinking about efficiencies, there might be more doubts. What is a efficiency? What do I introduce in the list? Because it says efficiency, anything that doesn't meet with the SARTs, well, there's so many things that can meet the definition. Any problem in the runway, any longitudinal deviation, the lack of a band or a rest at 90 by 90. Is that a deficiency or not? Or is it a deficiency if it doesn't have 240 by the width because of SAPs, right? So that's a recommendation. That would be a deficiency. So it says ICAO SAPs. It doesn't say the national regulations. So I don't know. This is something, because otherwise this list will be like not correct forever. So the best thing, my suggestion is to just clean it first. I agree with Rodrigo actually, because in the Carrasco airport, it was certified in 2018. And here we have some indications from or deficiencies from March 2004. And there is something that Rodrigo says that he is right, that these are referred to the ICAO SARPs. However, and we, the regulations that we have adopted are from lab. So we have to see how we compatibilize this list. Yes, thank you for your comments. Actually, and I don't know what happens, Fabio, but it's cutting off the images, and the audios are cutting off. I don't know if it's my problem or it's on your side or my side. It might be my side because I'm at home today, so maybe the connection is not. Can you hear me now? Well, and can you see the list? Do you have the list? Do you see the list of Uruguay in the screen? Yes, perfectly. We can see it perfectly. Okay, look at the list of Uruguay and at what Pepe and Rodrigo have said, right? That there are things that have been there for more than 20 years. Well, not more than 20 years, but almost 20 years. No, they are already they are of age already. They have a ID, etc. So, well, I do believe that what Rodrigo said, that's what actually we want to do with this paper. No, this objective number one for this first phase is to clean this list. We need to clean this. This is not okay anymore. And it might be fault of our fault or the state fault, whatever, but we need to clean this list first. And then the next target will be to define what we are going to introduce into this list. Look, I'm going to our headquarters are reviewing the methodology, and currently worldwide there's no criteria to say this is what will be here and this won't be here. It's pretty subjective, but we are the ones that have to do it. We are the ones that have to do it in this region. We can therefore evaluate, and in my opinion, we can evaluate and we can define which are the things that might have an impact in the efficiency of the plan, because as Rodrigo said very well, we cannot list all the non-compliances here for each airport. Not all the non-compliances necessarily have an impact in the safety or in the regularity of the operations at the same level, at least. And if we leave it open, it's going to be pretty subjective. Previously, the AGA officers were preparing this list because they were doing the missions. Now we do not do missions that often because, well, there's a lack of resources and different reasons. And it's not like the old ICAO, which was sort of the police with the states. We do not have that role any longer. So, and besides, actually, having said that, that's what some regions do. One region, one ICAO region decided that very well then, all the U deficiencies are those that have an input in a standard. All the A and B deficiencies are those that have an impact in the recommendations and best practices. It's still subjective. Another region, what they did was that they created a list and they said, okay, these are the deficiencies that we are going to verify, because we do consider that these are deficiencies that have an direct impact in the regularity of operations. For example, in this list, it says, okay, let me turn off my camera because I'm having this message of unstable internet connection. Well, in this list, it says very well, we as a region decided that the aerodrome certification is a deficiency to the regional plan, because if you check, and I'm going to show it here very rapidly. Allow me for a sec. If you review the plan, the world or the global air navigation plan, and this plan, now there is something that are called the BBBs. I don't know if you are familiarized with the basic building blocks, BBB. What in theory, these blocks, these are the basic building blocks that need to be present or need to be there. So these basic building blocks that should be present, I repeat, so that you will be able to build the air navigation improvements. So if you check the BBBs, and you can check them, you can see them here at the Gantt portal. So you go here to Global Technical and put BBBs. So if we go to the AGA BBBs, basically these building blocks or the basic modules, AGA basic modules, are all the systems that you can see here. And all these systems are tied or related to three categories: aerodrome design, aerodrome certification, or aerodrome operations. But if you see here the arrows, the aerodrome certification practically deals with all the different AGA aspects with regards to the BBBs. So it makes obvious sense to say, very well then, if an aerodrome in the list is not certified, then it is a deficiency to the plan, and that's it. And that's it. If an aerodrome is certified, but it doesn't have a RESA, so to say, or let's say, or for X or Y reason, then we might consider as a state whether the non-provision of the RESA is a deficiency or not. If the non-provision of CI corresponding to the category of the aerodrome is a deficiency, and even that is changing now. And if the lack of provision of an emergency plan, these are things that I believe that we as AGAs, we can analyze. And here there is a suggestion actually from Suriname, which indicates that we might work this in a specific committee to be able to evaluate this and to be able to share exchange experiences. I think that is a second phase, a second objective that we can work, as Rodrigo mentioned, and we can propose something to Repecas with regards to this, because currently there's not really, well, it's still very subjective. As Rodrigo has well said, it's very, very subjective. I mean, for me, if I am very picky, as they said in my country, and I think that this is not leveled up, I might see a deficiency, but does that have an impact in the security or safety? No, because the risk has already been mitigated and it will never be fixed, because it is a geographical condition that cannot be solved, cannot be corrected. So this is this very thin line that we are not very clear about. So, well, thank you for the comments from Pepe and Rodrigo. I don't know, is there any other comment before we go to the next, our next topic, and we will take note of all these comments? Yes, please, Fabio. Lázaro, please go ahead. Yes, this is about this table of deficiencies. I too agree with what Rodrigo and Pepe have said, that there are many difficulties to identify the new deficiencies, especially since it's been almost 20 years since this table was prepared. So in our case, the table can be sent to me. I'm the focal point for AGA, and we will update it. We will take out all the deficiencies that do not exist any longer. And the inclusion of new deficiencies, well, I believe that there needs to be a better explanation, guiding material, some way to know whether those operational aspects or infrastructure aspects are considered a deficiency or not. For example, with Goñas, we are implementing the IMAX system. What happens is the imaging system. What happens is that this system substitutes a RESA, but it's not one of them. It's not a RESA. It's a aircraft arrest system, and there is a problem with the RESA and the suit. IMAX doesn't provide this RESA with the compliance that the standard demands, in this case 150, the requirements that the standard establishes, in this case 150 meters. So would that be a deficiency or not? Therefore, I believe that we have to receive some guidance. We need some guiding material maybe in order to be able to introduce new deficiencies. I think that's the most difficult part of the work. Thank you. That was my comment. Thank you. Thank you, Lázaro. And this, yes, it's great for me. It's really something great that I'm taking note of here, something that we can then scale up. I think that this is something that, as I told you, that we can work in the region, because reaching out, global agreement, the ICAO times for that would be too long. So thank you, Lázaro, for your comment. And summarizing, and for this paper, we would like to, well, I will send to each one of the focal points the list for each one of your countries. No, and you will remove the deficiencies that are not longer applicable, and with an explanation. No, we eliminated this one because of this reason that you need to specify. Okay, and very well done. That would be with regards to working paper 3. Let's go now to our next paper. It's working paper 4. Please, if someone can tell me, can you see the working paper 4 in the screen? Can you see it? Yes, we can see it. We can see it. Thank you very much. Then working paper 4 deals with the regional air navigation plan updates. This is a very short note really, but it's important, however, and it is that some time ago, as you know, last year, in the meeting for the review of the REPECA's programs, there was a note number 9 in which they request the states to do a review of the contents 1 and 2 of the plan to issue new amendments if necessary. This was sent to you for most of the focal points to a letter. This was sent to you so that you could make a review of the table to verify whether there was a need to update something in the table. For example, if the name of the aerodrome changed, if the reference code changed, if there was a change in the rescue category, etc. Even if you estimate that some of these aerodromes should be withdrawn from the list or add new ones in the list, as we discussed yesterday, some states have plans to incorporate new aerodromes, and the idea is that you, in this review, you can sent us proposals for amendments to incorporate these new aerodromes. Currently, these countries, Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Paraguay, Venezuela, are working. Many of them have already sent the amendments. So the ball is in our field. We're making the update of the plan. It's a process that has taken more time than we expected, but well, we are working on that. And some states are already reviewing the contents of the table to validate this. So the suggested action for this note is just those states that have not done so, please take a look at the AOP tables to see whether they need to change something. And if you do not need to change anything, just communicate to Secretariat, hey, we do not need to make any change here, and we will keep the tables as they are now. If any state needs that we send this information again, we'll be glad to send the updated information of the table so that you will be able to make a review. Now, I need to mention that these amendments, we need to be careful with this because they cannot only be the focal point, the AGA focal point should do them and just not, because we need to see this can have impact in other tables, like in the med service tables and some other tables, they might be impacted. So what we would like to request you is that when you make this review, those of you who have not done it, please internally, I will ask you to communicate this to the air navigation areas so that they take this into account before you make the updates. And this is just, well, that's the contents of this working paper. It's a working paper because we are requesting an action from you, and that's what we have in section 3.1 C. So is there any comment regarding this note? Yes, I would request the floor, please. Yes, go ahead, please. I think that you sent them and we did the corrections. There were, you even sent some because we were not able to download it from one site, and you sent specifically the tables and the work that you wanted us to do. I understand that we have done this, so no, we have to make a review of the tables again. That's what I understand. Yes, yes. I am going to communicate with you, since we have to update. We have the focal points updated already, because the focal points that we have in the list for this topic specifically, it's not necessarily of all of you. So we would need to, well, what I would do actually is that I will share them again with you, but at the same time, I also want to request you and let us know if you will continue being the focal point for these tables specifically, or if there's someone else as focal point. There is a little validation that I would like you to help us with as well. In the case of Uruguay, Pepe, yes, if everything is okay and there are no changes, then what I would do with you, as I would do with the rest of the states, is to try to get your validation that, okay, we have already done this validation and we do not need to make any changes, because I don't have any amendment proposal from you. So if there is a change, so I don't have any information. I have some proposal from the states that are listed in item 2.2, only from them, which are the ones that for which we are processing amendments. Some states already know that internally there are some changes to make in the list. The states already know who they are, and well, the idea there would be that we check and review the list, so it will be in line with the updated information. And this is very important, of course, because currently the region is working in the implementation of volume 3. We do not have informative information paper regarding volume 3, but I will let you know the regional plan has 3 volumes. As I mentioned, the first and second volumes are include the facilities available, but volume 3 will list those. It is volume 3, it's sort to say the dynamic or flexible part in the list. Okay, it lists the initiatives to be able to get to implement these initiatives, to be able to reach the expectations, performance expectations. For example, if at the regional level we want to have a seamless, efficient, and safe airspace, there are a series of tools, these ASPUs from ICAO, that the states can implement. Some states are already implementing the AFTM from the ACDM. Fabio, I have a question. So there we will have the key KPIs, KPAs, and all these indicators to be able to develop things. It's not that simple. I mean, as just getting to a document, right? That's what I understand at least. Yes, the preparation of volume 3 is in process now and it's ongoing at this point. And the idea is that the states will first evaluate what is their performance expectation. And this is something that is related to the national plan. It's the national plan, the regional plan. They go hand in hand. It's very complex, yes. Because, for example, if we at the regional level, we have an expectation of, as I said, a seamless airspace, but it has some limitations of separations of aircraft with different characteristics, then we might be able to make decisions that this state that contains this verse should implement these measures to be able to get to the expectation, the regional performance expectation will be achieved. And that it will be broken down until the point in which the AGA area in which we have the ACDM is the most obvious, as most we could say, well, in order for these to perform adequately in the ATFM to work well at the regional level, we need that the main connection centers in the region implement ACDM. But maybe we might need at some airport that it's not a large connection center, but which is in an important route, we might need them to implement this ACDM, or we might need them to implement this operational measure, etc. So this is being prepared, this is being worked on at this point. Some of you participate in this fora, but to be able to build these improvements, it is like it's like a home, like a house to many of your engineers. To build the walls, you need very well foundations, robust foundations. This foundation is volume 1 or 2, so we need volumes 1 or 2 to be well detailed in the extent to say that yes, they are updated. These are the aerodromes that we have at the international level, with these facilities, with these gaps, with these opportunities, and this, and we know then that we are building on a adequate foundation.
So that's what I'm asking you now, to review volumes 1 and 2 in order to make sure that whatever we build in volume 3 is appropriate. In the AGA part, in volume 3, I can tell you that there are 2 initiatives that we as Secretariat believe that we can push. One, obviously, is ASBO ACDM, that has to be implemented by the airports. And there are other non-ASBO measures that also contribute to the creation of the conditions to ensure the performance expectations. For instance, what we're doing in airport planning and other initiatives that we can promote for implementation under volume 3. So that's still under development. And I wouldn't venture to say that we need to implement this or that, because as you said, Pepe, many states don't, they do have the data, but do not have a methodology to capture the data, to measure the data, and to say in this specific airport, the taxiing time taxi out times are very low, and this has an impact on the hubs, the destination hubs. So I need to implement a departure manager in this airport, or an ACDM, or some other measure, some other operational measure included in the ASBO. From the moment you put and take off the blocks, we need people in statistics, because they take the time when they put the blocks and up to the moment they take off the blocks. They the pushback, all that is measured. So you need a lot of people to work there. It's not only the AGA part. You need people in statistics and something else. The operators must provide those times. If the operators do not cooperate, I'm sorry, it was on my side. Sorry, please go ahead. If the operators do not contribute in providing those times, it's difficult for the person working in statistics. So it's a complicated issue. It needs a lot of time. We, the AGA experts, if we devoted 100% of our time to that, we couldn't do anything else, because it requires a lot of time. And I'm only talking about one of the KPIs, the runway circulation time, and the time at the gate when you put the block. You remove the block, the airplane departs, and you take that time, all those times. Thank you, and sorry for the interruption. No problem. Now we have two working papers of the project coordinator of Peru, I think, Livio, replacing Sadi. So he'll talk about these initiatives under these projects of ACDM, and he will give a better explanation. But before that, I wanted to present another paper, which is information paper number 4. But before that, I don't know if there is any other question regarding the updates of the AOP table. I don't see any additional comments or questions. So let me present information paper number 4. I'm going to be very quick. Just give me a sec. Okay, information paper number 4. Can you see it on the screen? Okay, thank you. Information paper number 4 is just to present the status of project F3. As I said before, there are 3 Graphicus projects. Let me zoom in a little. We already mentioned projects 1 and 2. Project 3 is ACDM implementation. How did it emerge? As you know, the SAM region up until 2015 was carrying out, or since 2015, is carrying out awareness raising activities on ACDM. Many airports in the region their own initiative, or maybe the initiative of the airport operator, have taken the initiative of implementation. In other states, because of an operational requirement from ANSP or even from the state, they are promoting the implementation of ACDM in some airports. ACDM involves operational measures for collaborative decision making. And when we say collaborative, it's because of the idea behind this concept is to involve all the interested parties. In other words, during the operation of aircraft, all the stakeholders should have the same information: air traffic, the control tower, the airport, the airline, the ground handling provider. All should have real-time information in order to make decisions and say if an aircraft should wait or not at the gate, how long it will take there, how long it will take to go to the gate, if the gate is going to be busy. Don't want to get into detail, but the idea of the project is to unblock, or better, take advantage of the existing capacity. So many airports, maybe the best way of increasing capacity is investing in infrastructure, building more aprons, but that is not always possible. And it takes a lot of time. Even if you have the money and the willingness, it takes time. So in the meantime, these activities can help to have a better use of the resources. ACDM helps a lot when there are irregular activities. For instance, when there are situations that reduce the capacity of the airport for whatever reason. So this procedure helps to have a better operation. In 1.3, the regional office identified the risk that these implementations might increase the possibility of inconsistencies amongst the states of the region. If each starts implementing things using their own language or their own methodology, when we want to connect ACDM to the entire regional network, there will be problems. If a pilot arrives at an airport and the actual in-block time is measured with the block in time, but another airport is measured in a different way, there shouldn't be those differences in these implementations. And although ICAO has it, guys, we wanted to work on something at a regional level through this project. And that's why in 2019, the ACDM project was approved by the PPRC, and some initiatives have been carried out. Like, for instance, down here in the information paper, we show where we are. The project has an initial implementation strategy that involves communicating guidance material, communicating through seminars, increasing awareness, and then the guidance material at regional level. The idea is that the next steps would be to review the inclusion of this initiative into the regional plan. This is the list of the resources on ACDM already provided. A survey that was carried out amongst the states regarding ACDM. And also the regional guys that was developed together with Council IATA and experts. In attachment A, we have a summary of the project. In the last meeting, I don't remember whether it was the virtual meeting number 3 of PPRC, a project where we have no coordinator. Peru proposed a coordinator, Sadi Beaumont, whose the idea is to, now we are reviewing the project and the strategy. I think that Olivia is going to present that on behalf of Sadi as a coordinator in order to guide the strategy of the project so that we may have the proper information from you in order to have an orderly implementation, so that the main airports of the region may implement this in a harmonized manner, and also to identify those airports that, although not being big hubs, may need to implement ACDM or could benefit from the implementation of ACDM or from some elements of ACDM. ACDM in the ASBUS, you can check that here. This is the GAMP portal. If you go to Global Technical, ASBUS, the GAMP portal will open all the elements of the GAMP of the ASBUS. And under ACDM, we have block 01, 02, 11, 12, 21, and 31, which are the steps for the implementation of ACDM. The basic one, the first one is the platform for sharing information, which is what we see go through the implementation of this project. And then we have the other phases, the interconnection with the ATM network, airport operations plan, airport operations center, total airport management. Remember, yesterday we discussed the TAM concept and full integration of ACDM and TAM in TBO. That's block 3. That's later on. This is only a concept for the time being. So as not to overwhelm you with so much information, we just want the airports to implement this information sharing. There's a KPA, right? Yes, with ACDM, that's an issue, because if you go here, this is something that is being discussed with headquarters, because we have identified that the ACDM has an impact on some KPAs and KPIs, but they are not identified. We don't know why, but I can show you another one. APTA, for instance. If you go to APTA, it clearly says that the implementation of APTA has an impact on KPI on capacity, and it can be measured through KPI number 10. In ACDM, we know that it's something similar, but it's not it's not specifically listed. Let me go up again. It's not specifically listed in the ACDM list. But these are things that we will solve as we work with the states in the regional plan. So that with respect to this information paper. Any comment before moving on to the colleagues of Peru? Very well then, thank you. Livio, are you there? Yes, Fabio, I'm here. I wanted to ask you, Livio, are you ready to make the presentation, or do you want a brief break before the presentation? Because there are 2 papers, so I think that maybe if you want to do them back to back, we can have a 15-minute break now, and then you can present the 2 papers. Or do you want to present one, then have a break, and then present the other one? I think we can have a break, and then we do the presentations back to back. Everybody agrees? Sure. Perfect. Very well then, let's be back as 10:35 Lima time. 10:35 Lima time. Okay? Okay. See you then. Okay, we're back. Livio, are you ready with the papers? Do you want to present them on the screen? Yes. It should be enabled. So there it is. Good morning, everybody. As Fabio already says in the previous paper, I'm participating in the project on the implementation of ACDM. Peru is the coordinator. The regional office of South America has already presented a guide that provides guidelines for the implementation of ACDM. In this guide, we may note that all the acronyms that should be used for the implementation of ACDM have been collected. As we know, ACDM is a methodology aimed at a more efficient use of the infrastructure or all the airport resources to improve operations. And in that sense, what we've seen through information paper 14 is that we need to update those acronyms. What's the use of that? Well, first of all, the ACDM involves a change in culture for everybody, because although in some airports we've been working in an isolated manner so far, but since the airlines only look at their operations, they file a flight plan, and many times there is no update, only they know it if those updates exist. The ATC, the control tower, does not have these updates. The airport operators are also affected by this situation, because if they don't have the updates, they cannot uh, properly assign the parking stands. So it's a chain reaction. It affects different stakeholders within the operation of an airport. So first, in order to have efficient operations, we should all have a common understanding. And here we get into the acronyms and some definitions that we will need to use in order to understand each other, so that all the information that may be shared will have a common understanding amongst all stakeholders, to avoid any subsequent problems and barriers. And for that, within the regional guides, we have the terms, but there are some that might need some modification in the region. Maybe a state may need to change a term because it is being used in a different way at an airport, or maybe it cannot be applied as it is. But those are situations uh, 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 are such that we need an implementation based on the same terminology, a standard terminology. So in document 9971, it says that ACDM implementation will also enable the establishment of a set of acronyms and definitions and harmonize the different definitions. Each actor uses language elements specifically related to their activities. So an improved exchange of information facilitates common definitions, which leads to a common understanding. According to the concept of ACDM adaptability and the importance of implementing ACDM based on local limitations and obligations, the aspects and circumstances to be taken into account at local level that will govern the application of those language elements and will determine the amendments to the language used locally. Since the direct exchange of information between CDM airports take place not so frequently, and since it occurs more frequently through the ATFM interface, if implemented. So first, we should know exactly what term means, and when we refer to something, all the actors may understand the same thing. And only then will we be able to share operational information, which is required in order to have a single situational awareness of what's happening at the airport. So we have prepared a table contained in attachment 1, where we compare what is presented in the guide, the white section, and what we are proposing as an update, both regarding the name of the acronym in Spanish as well as the definition for each of the acronyms. Although the acronyms here are mostly referred to the landmarks to be used in ACDM, or to the operation of aircraft at the airport. In this case, just to give an example, the actual commands of ground handling time, that's ACGT. That's the definition in English that we obtained from Eurocontrol that implemented this methodology. And in document 9971, we don't have an official definition yet. So we propose this definition, the actual time of start of ground handling. And the proposed definition is the time at which the ground handling service starts, can be the same as AIBT. In other words, anyway, these definitions are subject to the comments or new proposals that may emerge from the states of the region in order to do the updates. And we do this because, for instance, I have a question before you continue. Yes, go ahead. Can you go back to the previous one, please? Yes. When you talk about the commands of ground handling, what do you mean? When you put the block, or what was the beginning of the ground handling time? When does it begin? You say ground handling service on the ground. I ask because normally the aerodrome operator starts counting time in order to charge the airline from the moment they put the block. And it ends when they remove the blocks. So they say the aircraft has been so much time on the ground, that's a charge. So when you talk about the commence of ground handling, what do you mean? Well, ground assistance means at what time the ground handler is starting its operations to the aircraft. The charge of the rates for the use of the airport is not seen within ACDM. It's a point within the operation of the aircraft. The ACDM, if the aircraft arrived and is waiting, for instance, until the ground handler arrives, then we might say that that's a delay. That time should be measured so that we see where we can improve. Why didn't he arrive on time? Maybe he didn't have the information. Maybe the ground handler didn't have the necessary equipment available at that moment. So
I would like to define, maybe I'm not very much aware of a ground handling, but the beginning of the ground handling, what is the task? What is the task to verify that it's that what it refers to? So it starts downloading the luggage. I don't know. Should I put the battery, connect the AC? I don't know. What is the point for all of us to have the same definition? Ground handling starts when I connect the air, or I start downloading or checking out the luggage. Yes, in general, it speaks about the AIBT. Yes, Livia, if you allow me, please. I believe that yes, these type of questions are, we take note of them because yes, indeed, we have to, these are questions actually that will arise when we start working in the implementation. But what I can comment to you is that, as Livio has said, usually the ACGT, it's the same as AIBT, but not only not always ACBT. Because why? Because there have been, especially when the aircraft can park on its own without the help of I can tell you by my own experience. In my own experience in the airport, there's some times in which you have handlers to park the aircraft, but they put the blocks, but there's nobody to take care of them. The ground handler is not there to put the bridge or to put the equipment to for the luggage. They're not there to do anything really. Even worse in those airports in which there is a service, the visual docking service, this equipment to park on their own. So the aircraft, I don't know, I'm thinking maybe in a different scenario that I might not know exactly, but I understand that it is like that. They can get into the parking stand and the aircraft, and they will park there and wait until someone comes to take care of them. So ACGT, it's not the same as AIBT, but ACGT, it's important because it will have an impact in the rotation of the aircraft for the time of the aircraft in ground. So that's why I believe that what you say, we might need to define this a little bit better, maybe. Yes. And I believe that what Livio seeks in this proposal is to make it a little clearer, to have a clearer definition. We will take note of that specifically about that. The other thing that I wanted to mention was that even though the proposal of the project coordinator, and well, here we are supporting this, which is basically to submit this these changes. We do not necessarily need to approve them in this instance. The idea is that you take note of them. What we can do is that the Secretariat will share with you this list so that you will be able to review it internally with even with your airports, and we will give you some time for you to give your comments, and then we will be able to validate it. Of course, we won't be able to put different definitions for the same things. Actually, I was raising my hands. Joel, can you introduce yourself, because you were not here in the first day? No. Yes, I was here during the first days. Hi, I'm Joel Cordero. I'm a colleague from Livio Benitez. We work together with Sadi in the project in the ACM aspects. I just wanted to give you a little idea for you to understand. In the case of the ACDM, all the stakeholders share information. So in this case, the ACGT is not something that it's not something that we are measuring directly, but the ground handler will be giving us this time. It is just about defining when, what time, and the ground handler also always have different processes and different services that are hired. The airline can hire a very complete service for the ground handling, unloading, unloading fuel. And in some cases, they just can hire the loading and unloading of the luggage. We do not need the context of at what point or what actions are the ground handlers will conduct to start this time, just to ask them what time do they start their work, and that time it's a reference, a point of reference for us, but it is an hour, a time that the ground handler will give us. It is not something that we should be paying attention to measure. They will give us this information. Actually, thank you. Yes, indeed, this time, what this time determines for us is if this delays us in the occupancy of a parking stand, which might be more efficient, maybe, for this parking stand to be used more times. So that's what we want to know about within the ACDM. And as we said, it might be determined locally. As Fabio mentioned, there are situations in other airports that might not deal with things like this. The ground handlers that maybe have a different type of agreements on when they will start. So this is kind of to be determined locally in each one of the implementations that will happen, and this will be reflected actually in the manual, in the ACDM manual for each one of the airports. So it's variable. It doesn't necessarily need to be for all the same because there are actually different realities, and that's what we're trying to include in the definition, right? To give something more general, right? And basically what we want to standardize is what do we mean and what would we want with this term ACGT. As all the other terms here, I would request you please that you give your comments, and if necessary and if you consider convenient, maybe we might make a modification to these acronyms or definitions. And if you have any proposals, send us this proposal through the Secretariat, so we will compile all the information and we will be able to update this document, and then we will share with you the final document, the final result for this table. So is there any further question, or do we need to read each one of the definitions? There are many, actually. There's Mario Verdugo raising his hand. Mario, please go ahead. Yes, thank you very much. Just congratulate Livio and his colleague for the proposal. I just wanted to mention that the impact that the inclusion of definitions has many times, as well as the acronyms, right? Because many of them require, as very well said by Livio, the consideration or having a guidance material, because sometimes each acronym or definition has a great impact. The safety team, range, the RCT or compatibility, or many others. So it is very well considered. This proposal should always go hand in hand with a guiding material. And we should also consider the complexity of the aerodromes, because yes, indeed, there are aerodromes in which maybe they do not require this implementation, while there are other aerodromes in which actually they need this more, and it is very useful from the operational standpoint. That's just what I wanted to mention. Thanks, Fabio. Okay, great. We will take note of your comments. Yeah, in reality, the ACDM could help in any airport, really. However, actually, we will make a note to see in what airport would it be more of a priority to implement the ACDM. And just to give you a final comment regarding the definitions, these definitions are mainly based on points in the operation of an aircraft, in the whole operation of the aircraft. So these different points will be measured what for, so that in each one of them we will have the exact piece of data to see what happened in those points or in those areas, if there was a delay or not, to achieve total optimization and the standardization of the terms. For example, this is done because let's suppose previously we had an acronym which is ATA, actual time of arrival, ATA, or the ATD, actual time of departure, ATD, which sometimes in the air traffic control, it was seen as the time in which an aircraft arrived or took off. However, the same acronym was taken by other actors in the ground handler or in the same airport operator, not the time the aircraft left the parking stand. So the idea of these definitions actually is having just one definition, one single definition that will tell us what was the time in which aircraft landed in the strip, right? To having this actual landing time, which is better understood. So all these definitions aim at that, at standardizing each one of the points of the operation of an aircraft. So maybe each one of them have different times to be measured. This is the idea of this, to have an explanation that it's understandable in each one of the points. That would be all for this information paper. Thank you. Thank you, Joel and Livia, and thank you, Pepe and Mario, for the comments. Yes, this is an informative paper, just an informative paper, because it was not published, didn't have time for the publication. But the objective, obviously, is that our colleagues, if you could review this list internally, especially the states that are already implementing the ACDM, to see whether the list helps you in the explanation of the acronyms in the original setting and the original context. And yes, indeed, the translation. Well, first of all, not all the acronyms are translated in the document, first that thing, and then 9971, some of them are translated with some terms that are not necessarily the ones that we use in the region. So we need to validate that as well, the translation part. So, well, what I would like to propose to you all is that we share the list with the report, and we would request your comments. We will ask for your comments. If there are no comments, then we will take these terms as accepted, and then we will be able to change the regional guide to this new list. The idea is that those airports are already implementing ACDM took into account the list to try to be as uniform as possible. That's the objective here. That's what we seek with this. If there are no further comments, then thank you, Livia, and then we will go to the next paper. I think Pepe has a comment. Go ahead, please. No, just I don't remember now, but I just wanted to talk about the relationship that these definitions can have with those that we use in the key KPIs and KPAs, because all these type of definitions, these are managed by people that are in the statistics part, where they collect data and they prepare their graphs and their charts. and it's not the AGA exactly. It's not necessarily the AGA. There are other people managing this in the organization, and so it depends extensively on the information that they would like to provide. In our case, we we prepared a document to be able to have this information. It's not a demand that we provide all the information of, obviously. So, well, it was just a comment to clarify the fact that we also need the people working in the statistics area who are the ones who manage this data. And this is pretty much related with the other work that it's being done, in which we have the KPIs, the KPAs, and the air navigation plans and all of that. Well, thank you. It was just a comment. Thank you. Okay, Pepe, yes, thank you. That's the idea actually that you share with us, if you are not the part directly involved with these topics, to share this with the people that worked with this specifically. That is the idea. So let's go to the next paper, Livy. Yes, Livio? Yes, in this second paper, we have submitted this to provide tools to the SAM region states so that they can make better decisions on the implementation. Basically, the idea is to see what airports, or in which airports we could start the implementation of ACDM with a greater priority. So it is also related to what someone mentioned a minute ago. Someone who asked a question. All the acronyms are included in the KPIs that the Gantt has proposed. So we maintain these acronyms and the definitions to follow this up. And currently in the group that is a GCA, which is part of the summit as well, SAMAG, we make a presentation. We have presented the results for some of these indicators, like, for example, the one of the punctuality in the arrival and the departure, that we will discuss as well in this paper, information paper. So in reality, there has been a growth in the air operations in several airports. May have had some levels of saturation, and that has kind of well, has produced some problems in the last few years because of the pandemic. There has been a halt in this growth because of the world pandemic. This is now recovering gradually, but maybe in many airports we have not gotten yet to the pre-pandemic level. So there is an opportunity here for the implementation of improvements through the ACDM, which it's also included as an ASBU element, or actually several ASBU elements from the Gantt. One of them has already been mentioned by Fabio, the exchange of information, which is what we want to achieve with this AF3 project. So ACDM will improve the performance, as we mentioned, throughout the airport by making an efficient use of the airport resources. What we want with this paper is to obtain a base measurement, an initial measurement to know what is the need of the states to implement ACDM, even though there are implementations in the region already, like, for example, in Colombia, in Brazil, in Peru as well, which was also following these steps. However, in our case, it has been stopped. This has been stopped or halted because of the pandemic, really. And we hope that this year we will be able to reactivate this. So here, what we want is to make use of these indicators that you see here to be able to see or to prepare a baseline to see which are the airports that should be implementing ACDM. As part of these indicators, we can observe those that make reference to the punctuality in the departure, KPI 1, punctuality at arrival, KPI 14, and KPI 11, the efficiency, airport performance efficiency. For these, we will propose a survey that we will see. The proposal will be focused on KPI 01 and KPI 14 initially, because of the experience that we have had. We have not measured 100% of KPI 11, and that's the reason for which we are not going to take this KPI, but it is one of the KPIs that might help us as well in this prioritization. So here there is an initial, the first initial point will be to learn more about the implementation of these indicators, if we are doing this in the region, in the states of the region, and the procedures as well, the procedures, coordination procedures existing in the airports, as well as the follow-up that we need to have of these procedures. Basically, then, we consider that by having already measured the situation, we can have a reference of the operations in the airport. So we can know, for example, if we are having some deficiencies or delays in the punctuality in the arrivals or the departures. If this punctuality is being affected, we can see that the airport might be having some problems. It might be a deficiency, or it might be a different type of problem or issue, but that gives us an indication, and that's what we want to measure. We are going to, well, for that, we will see that a survey has been prepared, which will be used as a baseline, as we mentioned before, always highlighting that within the airports, according to IATA, we have a classification. Level 1, the airports where the capacity of the airport infrastructure is generally sufficient. That means that we do not need to make anything because there's no imbalance. The demand that doesn't exceed capacity. Level 2, it's when there is a likelihood of congestion because the demand might exceed at some time to the capacity. And level 3, where these are airports where providers, well, they do not have enough infrastructure, sufficient infrastructure. This level 3, in this case, the demand in level 3, the demand exceeds capacity. So this is the base that IATA give us for level 1. There's no action, but for level 2, yes, we have the facilitation, which is to assign schedules to the company so that they would be able to operate in level 3. These need to be coordinated, and they will have slots for each one of the airports slots. And what we will do actually is to get there to try to see the level in which the different airports are, and with this information to know how they are managing these things, to be able to have a better idea of how to, or what priority to give the different implementations in these airports based on the imbalances that they might be experiencing in terms of demand and capacity. Now, ACDM is made out of these conceptual elements. It's 6. One is sharing of information, which is the basis for everything. The landmark approach, it's number 2. Variable taxi time, 3. Departure pre-sequence, 4. Adverse conditions, 5. And 6, the collaborative flight update management is part of this project. F3, we have as a goal to be able to have a tool to be able to deal with this first conceptual element, which is the exchange of information, which is proposed to be implemented. This should be implemented by 2024. This can be reviewed, of course. It doesn't necessarily need to be like this, but this in the airports where we identify the need to implement this, which is obviously based on the survey. So we invite the state to take note of this note that you or paper, and we invite you to check the survey if necessary to propose improvements as well. And for this we have the attachment 2, which are the definitions considered for this information paper, the definitions using this information paper. And the proposal, it's the following, it's coming next. It just has 10 questions, sorry. We would like you to answer these questions if possible, being as specific as possible, as detailed as possible, to try to know more about the airport in the different states, in each one of the different states. So the question 1 is whether you have identified airports where demand exceeds the capacity of the airport infrastructure, indicate the airports identified and their main constraints. The objective of this question is to uh, know the possible candidate airports by each state for the implementation of ACDMs. Question number 2 is, have you implemented any mechanism for the airport capacity management or coordination procedures? Specify. The objective here is to identify what strategies are used by the airports to allocate airport capacity or distribute airport capacity. Question 3 is, what entity is in charge of performing flight scheduling management and how this is carried out? Specify whether it is the airport operator, the air operator, the aeronautical authority, or which entity takes care of this. The objective here is to determine if there is an entity in charge of strategic planning and the procedures related to it. Question 4 is how the flight schedule update is carried out. What happens if an airline wants to make a change in their scheduling or a modification? Maybe, well, that flow, the objective here is to get to know that flow of how this information is updated and how it will affect the allocation of resources. Many times the airlines change things last minute, and that might have an effect in the allocation of the parking stands, for example, on the airport side, and that might generate maybe a congestion there. So that's what we would also like to know. Question 5, how do you keep track of aircraft movement on the apron, the arrivals and departures from the parking stands, maybe the on blocks or off blocks, or what do you have here? We would like to request you to be pretty specific here. The objective of this question is to determine if there is an operation, the operations in the platform, in the apron, in the tarmac are tracked. No, there's a tracking of these operations. Question number 6 is, how is the monitoring of departure flight punctuality, how it is carried out? This is KPI 1 and KPI 14. That's for the arrival flights, no? But we will take now only KPI 1, which is the departure flight punctuality. And the objective of this question is to identify if the flight scheduling is in line with the airport capacity. It's in accordance to this capacity. Question 7 would be, what are the parameters for determining the flight punctuality? Many states, usually they take them plus minus 15 minutes. That's what many states take, or in some cases it might be a standard 0. That's what we would like to know from the states in the answers to this question. This is to identify whether there is uniformity of criteria in terms of measuring punctuality, to know if we all are talking the same language, if we are talking about the same. Question 9 is, who or what entity is in charge of monitoring punctuality? And the objective of this question is to identify if there is a follow-up, and which is the entity, or if what is the entity doing this, and if there is any corrective action that we might need to achieve better punctuality, if we need to make changes in the scheduling, all of that. And question 10 is information on forecasted demand at airports shared. through all the actors, the flight plans maybe, or maybe some updates. So here we need you to specify. The objective here is to know if there is any procedure for sharing information or exchanging information, to know if there are already some procedures or the progress you have made in this, which is the baseline for the implementation of the ACDM. And well, that will be all. And here in attachment 2, you have some of the definitions that we have taken into account for this paper. So that will be all. Is there any question maybe? Mario is raising his hand. Mario, you have the floor. Yes, well, again, I would like to thank Livia for the presentation. Excellent again. I would like to ask, is it possible to make a reference or link or associate maybe in some part of this proposal the MS as a tool, as a not operational but methodological tool that might be related? Is it possible to incorporate it? That's the question that I have, Livia. Thank you. Well, in reality, the ACDM goes more or focuses more on operational aspects, more than maybe security. It's more safety, but it is, yes, obviously related to the operation of the airport, of course. In this part, I'm not quite sure really that the SMS might be integrated directly to the ACDM. I don't know if Fabio has anything to say about this. Yes, what I might say about this, to add to Mario's comment, is that, well, the implementation of ACDM, as Livio has well said, is more directly related to the capacity and the efficiency of the process, but it has a safety component. Actually, Aerocontrol, the pioneers on this, they conducted a study on the impact on safety that ACDM has, the impact that ACDM has on safety. So yes, I believe that when we start implementing this concept in the airports, we might involve SMS so that they can evaluate the potential impact on safety of this implementation. I think that this point is valid. We might need to give them a guideline, maybe a guide on how to conduct this evaluation. Yes, that's true. But in theory, what the theory and the experience in Europe indicates that when we implement with ACDM, when people start sharing better information, the safety increases and improves because everybody is aware of what is happening. There are many less mistakes made because decisions are made in a more collaborative manner. So, well, that just to give our comments about that.
Carlos, you have your hand raised. Yes, Fabio. I want to thank the colleagues who have presented the paper. I think it's very interesting. And to let you know that in Colombia, especially at the El Dorado airport, which is the most congested airport in the country, efforts have been made for the implementation of ACDM. And it's a very important experience because it's precisely what we were saying, to maximize the use of the resources. And regarding the question of how SM as what's the impact on the SMS? Well, we have to implement the ACDM, and it involves a change in the way of operations. So we must assess the change and its impact, how it impacts safety, and create awareness amongst all the stakeholders as to the importance of making a more efficient and rational use, and that does not go against the levels of safety at the airport, because regardless of the efficiency and the agility in the provision of the services, the most important thing is safety. So that part is very important. And it seems to me that the concern of the colleagues is quite relevant. Thank you. Thank you, Carlos. We take due note of the comments. I just wanted to mention that the survey will help us understand on the issue of ACDM. Some time ago, we conducted a survey amongst the states. I received mixed results regarding ACDM implementation, but in a discussion we had with the project coordinators, the doubt was what's the parameter to define whether an airport needs to implement it or not? Because initially it was a thought that ACDM was only for congested airports, the big airports, very complex airports. So it's obvious that the parameter would be, well, let's take a number of operations or traffic so that those airports that have a traffic uh, above a certain level, they have to implement ACDM. Then we can include that in volume 3 of the regional plan involving a performance expectation, a KPI with the respective KPIs, and the states would do the implementation. But the reality is that is not necessarily an issue exclusive for congested airports, because in the Peruvian experience, for instance, they saw the need to implement ACDM in a city pair between Lima and Cusco because of the amount of traffic they had and the restrictions both Lima and Cusco has. So they benefited from the implementation of ACDM in both airports, despite the fact that Cusco by itself wouldn't have fallen into the category of requiring ACDM because it doesn't have the number of operations. We believe that similar situations may occur, for instance, in Brazil, and in Colombia, where they have a lot of domestic traffic between domestic cities with Bogota. And that might occur in airports that have seasonal operations. In Uruguay, for instance, with Laguna del Sauce, and Pepe will correct me, in the summer, traffic increases a lot, and that can have an impact on operations in Montevideo. In Argentina, we have FIRs with several airports in the single airspace. Maybe it would also be convenient. So the idea is to capture data, to capture information in order to conduct an analysis and see what would be these airports that would need to implement block 0 information sharing. Of course, if an airport does not fall into this category but is interested in doing, well, that's great. Under the projects, we would include it also, because at the end of the day, there is a study of your control of the benefits of ACDM on airports. Not necessarily these airports need to implement all the ACDM modules. We need to capture information that was decided at the meeting of coordinators. That's the idea, to capture more information. So we are going to be in touch with you, maybe get the support of VASILAC in order to capture information from some operators directly. Initially, we want to understand how do the states manage the itineraries in order to better understand the problem. Livio? Yes, that's precisely it. This process of how flight programming is done in order to know how is it that procedures are applied, if all the region does it in the same way. And as you said, is not only based on the number of operations at an airport, but also the complexity of the operations at the airport that would benefit from the implementation of ACDM. Very well then. Rene? Thank you, Fabio. Good morning, everybody. By way of a question, after the states respond to the survey, is it possible to share that information? Because that survey will involve more than one area, and it could be of benefit to know how the states handle the frequency, the schedules, and so on, because those processes are not under the aerodromes unit, but rather under air transport. And maybe there are good experiences to share. So it would be good to share the results of the survey amongst all the states. Thank you. Thank you, Rene. I speak on behalf of Livio, the colleagues of Peru who are in the coordination, and for sure, it's an important challenge because I can tell you about my experience, and here we have the Panamanian colleagues that can correct me if I'm wrong, but I recall my experience. The airlines sent their itineraries to the Civil Aviation Authority, Air Transport, the authority approved them, and then they went to the airport to ask about with the itinerary already approved, to ask about the availability of gates, and the airport said with that type of aircraft you cannot operate at this time of the day. So there was no coordination. I think that was solved afterwards, but these are issues that can be expressed, the gaps that can be bridged, even if they can present gaps that can help you operate better, especially with the industry when you have airports that are privately operated, or even in public airports managed by different entities. I think that this exercise will be very beneficial. Maybe in the survey, we can give some additional guides, as Mario said at the beginning, giving guidance as to what we seek. Thank you for the comment, Rene. Thank you, Fabio. I was listening to the comments made by Livio. Here in Chile, we don't do ACDM directly in AGA, but of course we have to coordinate with whomever is managing ACDM. But there are many entities that participate in ACDM. In the case of Chile, the Ministry of Public Works, through the airports unit, is the one that builds all these surfaces, both horizontal and vertical surfaces at the airport, and the DGCA and we must also take into account the changing environment of the airport as a result of the demand. The main airport is having many constructions, not only the terminals, but also in the movement area. And the same thing happens with other airports of the country. So that is also changing the demand and the capacity of the airport. So here I see that many organizations participate, and therefore this is a titanic task. First of all, I would like to congratulate Livio. So it's a big task. We have to articulate all those who participate, especially on the apron, that is where we see that the capacity of the airport is more affected. That's all I wanted to say, Fabio. Thank you. Thank you, Roberto. We take due notes of your comments. Very well then. If there are no further comments, I would like to thank Livio, Joel, and Sadi as well, although he's not here. Livio, please convey our acknowledgement to Sadi. And we will meet in order to adjust the survey to be filled by the states. Maybe we will send it electronically through an automated system. I'm sorry, Fabio. Lázaro, go ahead. On ACDM, I would like to comment on the system that is being implemented in Brazil. The, the airport of Guarulhos has implemented this system some time ago, 2 years ago, but at the other airports, especially those that had been operated by Infraero, these airports have a system that they call CGA, Airport Management Center. That could be the beginning of the implementation of ACDM, because that CGA is implemented at the airport in a specific room with several monitors, where they know everything about the movement area of the airport, and they have representatives of the airlines, of air traffic control, the airport operator, and companies that provide airport services. So we are trying to implement that ACDM philosophy, which is very important in our opinion. We are lagging behind with respect to Europe and the United States in this regard, but I think that with this survey and with this initiative of ICAO, I think that it's going to help a lot. Thank you. Thank you, Lázaro. Yes, with Brazil, they have a project with Eurocontrol, I think. Well, thank you very much to the colleagues of Peru once again. And that would be the last paper under agenda item 4. Agenda item 5 does not have any papers, as I said before. Pepe? Yes. Just to clarify a few things. There is a working group with volume 3 of the Air Navigation Plan at the national strategic level for the application of ACDM. And that's linked to other working groups and they can receive this information for the development of the Air Navigation Plan Volume 3. So I'm going to share this information with them as soon as I get back, because they are the ones who are carrying out this type of work. Thank you. Thank you, Pepe. Yes, it is related. So you can take these initiatives to that group as well. Agenda item 5 has to do with aspects of resilience and adaptation to changes in the airport environment. The initial idea of this agenda item was to allow you to share experiences or requirements regarding resilience and adaptation. What do we mean by this? If you identify that it's a problem at your airport, things like climate change, the adaptation to COVID-19, for instance, lessons learned from the adaptation of the processes to this situation, and how can we build a more in with more resiliency? In other words, in the future, when we have similar situations, how can we adapt more quickly? Since this is broad issue for discussion, we won't have a chance to do it now. What I suggest is two things. If somebody wants to say something about any experience related to this issue, and they can do so. If not, we'll take note of this topic in order to include it as a future priority for discussion. I know that in our region, for instance, we don't have severe weather conditions as in the Caribbean, but we do have situations in which we have earthquakes, for instance, or uh, what other problems we could have regarding uh, changes in the airport environment. So it's just to see if you have any comments in this regard, or if not, we would leave it in the parking lot, as we say, or in standby to be addressed later on, and we would move on to other business, agenda item 6. Any comments regarding agenda item 5? Very well then, thank you. Let's move on to agenda item 6, other business. This is an open agenda to discuss different topics, but we have an information paper by the technical committee of the system. Rodrigo? I can share my screen, right? Do you want to share your screen? Yes, I will. It's on the website. It's open here. Okay. Can you see the paper on the screen? Yes. Yes, we can see it. Good. I'm sorry. I got the wrong button. Okay. I'm going to present this information paper, the purpose of which is to present, I'll slow down to help the interpreters. So this information paper seeks to take advantage of the presence of our AGA colleagues of the states of the region, which includes states that do not belong to the SRVSOP, in order to disseminate what we are doing in the AGA area within the system and the progress made in this regard. I'm not going to read the paper. I'm just going to make some brief comments, especially for the colleagues that are not directly involved in the system, that do not participate in the panel, or states like Suriname and Guyana that are part of the system. The SRVSOP system is the regional safety oversight cooperation system, which is known as a regional safety oversight organization. RSOO, which uh, brings together the efforts of the states that provide resources, and with those resources, joint activities are carried out. So the system was specifically established. The SRVSOP was established through an MOU between the LACAC, Latin American Civil Aviation Commission, and ICAO in the 90s. And it was implemented, it started operating in the early 2000. Of course, I wasn't here yet, but it started more or less at that time to address safety issues related to airworthiness and operations. What's the purpose of the system? The system is an RSOO, a regional safety oversight organization. It's like EASA, which is an RSOO, which is well structured and has a high level of relationship between its regulations and the standards of the states that are part of that organization. So the SRVSOP does not have the level of EASA, but through that collaboration amongst the states that are members, they propose regional regulations that we call regulations, but actually they serve as a model for the states that may adopt them or harmonize them, and guidance material, bulletins for the application of these SARPs of ICAO, and the documents of the bans the aerodromes in the case of AGA in order to address ICAO issues. Also, it provides technical support to the states so that the states may increase their level of safety, specifically talking about AGA, but also in other areas. For instance, increasing their level of compliance with the use of AGA protocols, their level of incorporation of SARPs, and their technical capabilities. So within the system, we pool efforts in order to provide training to the technical personnel of civil aviation authorities of member states and also of the industry in order to train AGA inspectors. We also carry out multinational activities. For instance, for airworthiness, we have multinational certification through agreements among the member states. The system does the certification and the states accept that certification. They accept that certification and they recognize that certification. In the case of AGA aerodromes, we carry out multinational activities of certification as a way of assisting the states in their certification processes. Maybe they can start a certification process, or they already have one, but they request our assistance because we can bring inspectors from other countries with more experience. And that exchange of knowledge is very enriching for the inspectors of the state that is receiving this technical assistance. So basically, those are the mechanisms that the system has to support the states. And all those mechanisms at the beginning of 2010 were provided for AGA as well. In AGA, we started in 2010, 2011. So what did we do during that period of time? Well, we worked, we developed. When I say we worked, It's the AGA panel, which are experts assigned from the states to be part of an AGA panel coordinated by the technical committee. And they developed the AGA laws. There are 5 right now, 5 regulations: LAR 139, aerodrome certification; 153, aerodrome operations; 154, aerodrome design; 155, heliport design and operation. And the most recent one is a LAR 77 on objects, implementations, and activities that may negatively affect safety or regularity of air operations. It's a new law that was approved by the General Board in March of this year, and that was accepted and discussed by the AGA panel last year. So with that, the states altogether provide a group of regulations, a set of regulations that is in accordance with the latest amendments to Annex 14, Annex 19, and the PANS AGA, where we have the SARBs and the most important procedures that we must bring to the level of regulations in the states. Some states adopt them, and many states, most states, harmonize their regulations with the laws. In addition to that, we have several advisory circulars that are harmonized with the ICAO documents. For instance, we worked in 2020, 2021 to provide advisory circulars on the chapters of part 2 of the 3rd edition of PANS Aerodrome, several chapters regarding procedures addressed basically for the aerodrome operator. Most of what is contained in volume 1 of the PANS on certification and safety management, that was brought to the LAR as a regulation, and all that is in the guidance material. And we also have the MIAGA, which is the AGA Inspector Manual with a new edition at the beginning of 2022 that brings a set of procedures that the state can use to develop its AGA Inspector Manual, which is a very important tool in the safety oversight system. As many colleagues know, we also provide a lot of training, and that training is aimed at meeting the needs of the state. So in the last few years, we've provided training courses at the request of the states, but also we provide training for a specific objective. For instance, last year, we conducted a training to support the states in the implementation of a GRS. Also, we also provide training for aerodrome certification, or this year in August, we are going to have a course on safety assessments. I'm sorry, I think your microphone is on. And we also provide training, always requested by the states, on knowledge and application of the AGA laws, GSI AGA, which is a pre-requirement for the certification with an AGA law. Multinational inspectors, not the only requirement, but one of the requirements that we have, and that the states require. They want their inspectors to take the course and to have that vision of the AGA laws and other international experiences, or simply because it's a part of the training of their national inspectors. We also have assistance to the states. When a state requires, we provide a direct assistance to the states with a cost recovery methodology. if it's face-to-face. If it's virtual, there's no cost, especially to prepare for the AGA USOAP audits. That's what states require, but also on other specific topics, we may provide that type of assistance. For instance, for the implementation of the RST, we're working on a project together with the office, and also these multinational certification, the multinational certification carried out by the AGA area, uh, separate from what the airworthiness area does. In our case, it's like assistance, providing a new vision or a more multidisciplinary and multinational vision of the certification for the state that receives what we used to call certification trials, and now we are working to change that term to certification assistance. The the first one was in Carrasco, Uruguay, quite successful, and after that trial that had other initial objectives, Uruguay took that trial and its results in order to certify the airport of Carrasco. And then we saw that since we still had half of the airports, international airports of the region that are not yet certified, we saw an opportunity for that trial, for that activity to help the states to certify their aerodromes. Right now, we are doing a certification trial at the airport of Loa Calama in Chile, and the colleagues from Chile are working hand in hand with us, conducting the process, because in the end, it's the state that provides these certificates, not the system that issues the certificate, but we provide knowledge, information, and discussions, and we do our technical part to support the state as it requires.
We have also started and we are already finishing the first stage of the process in Tocume in Panama, which is a pretty important airport for the region, and we are supporting Panama to start with their certification program, and we will start as well in the Comodoro aerodrome, Comodoro Rivadavia in Argentina. We're going to start there. Once they pass the USWAP audit in June in Argentina, once this phase is completed, then we will start these procedures. Argentina already started its certification program, but anyway, they suggested they indicated that they needed some assistance in this airport, and assistance from the system. So our vision, our objective with all of this, with the technical committee and a specialist from the technical committee, Fabio is the AGA officer, and he's also involved in the technical committee. And I can tell, what I can say from the office itself is that the states should improve their safety levels, but through which, by certifying their airports, their international airports. But to certify these airports, they need to have technical capacity, they need to have trained staff, they need to have regulations, guiding material, they need to have trained inspectors enabled to certify. And certification means, apart from making a diagnosis on how the infrastructure is, the visual aids, the obstacle systems, electrical systems, maintenance operations, etc. Apart from this diagnosis, they should also have to deal with the non-compliances that it's evaluating, or evaluating the safety to bring a level of safety that it's acceptable and that it's as high as possible, or the other way around, the risk that is as low as possible. And I believe that the system, since it started its activities in AGA around 2011, 2010, has helped and has achieved its objective because, for example, in 2013, when there was a meeting in Bogota and we agreed this issue of certification, we had less than 10% of international aerodromes certified in the region. And now in 2020, well, last year in 2021, we are at 50%. We are growing despite the pandemic that delayed the whole program in some of the states. States like Bolivia and Peru that have 100% of their aerodromes, international aerodromes certified. Some other states are programs pretty much advanced and with a very clear perspective of when they will be completing or finalizing all their aerodromes certified. So like Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Uruguay. Other states are still, well, in the process, starting their programs. But just as in the previous working paper that was discussed here, they are trying to make progress in their program and certifying their aerodromes. Also talking about the assistance provided by the system, by the cooperation with the office last year for GRIF. The SAM is one of the most advanced actually in the implementation of the new global format. So on my part, I believe and talking on behalf of the colleagues, really, because the system is not us in the office in Lima. The system is the states with the colleague that contribute, that support, and that are part of the AGA plan or who act as multinational inspectors or multinational trainers. Here, we are just facilitators. We facilitate this communication among the states, and we try to consolidate and bring or join all the different experiences in one single place. So we consider that all the member states should improve the quality of monitoring of the safety in the aerodromes, which is the AGA area. And also, and even for the colleagues that are not from states that participate in the system, we must say that initially the system in its regulations indicates that any state from the Americas, Central America, North America, the Caribbean, they can participate. If they wish, they can participate. They can become a member state for this system. So that's what I wanted to share with you. And besides, apart from what I have said here, there are informations on the systems, on the activities, the training available, the meetings, all of that is in the VSOP portal or at the internet. It's here, here it is, www.srvsop.era. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rodrigo, for your presentation. Sorry, I think that Oscar from Chile. Okay, go ahead, please. Can you hear me? Well, Rodrigo, very clarifying your presentation, and actually a couple of weeks ago that we were in Calama, we discussed this, and it's relevant that we say here that this is more than a trial, should be an assistance to the certification of the states and the airports. That's what I understood. And this is actually pretty valid because together with this assistance, the airport or the state can certify the aerodromes in a joint work as we do this, as we are doing in Chile, because on one hand, we have the certification, the authority, I mean, is certifying the Calama airport, and at the same time, you are conducting the trial here. So the fact that you have an assistance to certification is extremely valid. It's pretty realistic, and I think that it's much better than call it just a trial or and say. I agree, and I think that this should this should apply to everybody because it is a very relevant contribution that you do for the certification of aerodromes. And sorry, because I'm having some throat problems. Yes, thank you for sharing with us your experience, your inputs from your own experience in Chile at this point. Thank you, Oscar. I think that we had Pepe and then Roberto. Pepe, go ahead, please. Just say. No, Pepe, we cannot hear you very well. Can you please approach your microphone because we cannot hear you very well? Now it's better? It's better now. Go ahead, please. Yes. We received a note with regards to our 155. We then, after that note, we made follow the whole process to adopt the last amendment. We had it adopted, but this is the last amendment. But I had the doubt, since we are working with teleworking, we received a note for LARS 77. You sent the note already? Have you sent the note already so that we can start adopting the law? I don't remember having received it, or if I receive it, I don't really remember. I remember the law 153, 54, and 55. We made the adoption of the amendment for LAR 155, but I don't remember LAR 77. Maybe you sent a note and I didn't got it, or I don't know. I just wanted to know if you had already sent it. No, it was sent to the states the third round last year, and 77, the first edition, as well as Amendment 7 for LAR 139. Those were approved on March 25th. So I believe, I imagine that when the report was prepared, the report of the 33rd meeting of the General Board, it was a little delayed. I think it was published mid-May or something like that. I have the information is open in my computer now, but I cannot see it now. And a note was sent to the states that this LAR was approved, the Amendment 7 439 and the first edition of LAR 77. But since it was delayed, there was a delay, we do not have the final edition. 77, yes, we already had the final edition, actually, and I am going to send it. And I don't remember if there is a note or not to the states. I believe so. Anyway, the text that has been submitted to the General Board has already been approved, and the text that has been submitted to the General Board is in the records of the meetings of the board and in the report of this meeting. Okay, so we just need to wait until we receive it, until you send it. Yes, I'm going to send it as fast as possible. It is no, it's not. There's no hurry. It's just no, yes, there's a hurry here because the states need to harmonize this. It is one of our concerns. No, there's in 139 specifically that there are many changes, but thank you for letting us know. Thank you, Rodrigo. Pepe, okay, Roberto, no, and then Renzo. Thank you, Fabio. I just wanted to highlight the great work that the SRV sub is doing. In a very few, in just 10 years, they have made a great deal of progress in AGA, in safety. We as a state, as Chile, we have had a much closer work, as Rodrigo has explained very well. Quote unquote, this information paper is very clear regarding the work that it's being done by the SRV sub, and we are working more in trying something, improving something, and we are working in a process of certification because as you have said, the state of Chile has accepted this work, and the two teams, the SRF SOAP is working hand in hand with Chile for the aerodrome. We are working, and this has allowed us to work in a certification with the advances that we are making with the joint work with the experiences of the multinational team, the SRV-SOP team. And it has allowed us to gain more experience in terms of certification. And we have had more than 20 virtual meetings with the technical committee of the SRV-SOP, and we wish and we expect that we will be finishing this year with this work done. And as this working note mentioned, more than a trial or a test, it's a very important work for the state, in this case for Chile. It's very important for us to be able to have the experience of all the other states. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Roberto. We are taking note of your comments. Yes, and indeed, what you said in the working paper, we had the results of SR swap and the impact in the results, yes, at the regional level. Renzo. Sorry, LAR 77 is not available in the technical library? Not yet. The truth is that it is available in the portal. When you put LAR proposed amendments, in that section, you will find a version that was edited for the third round of consultations to the states. And that edition that is there was the one that was submitted to the General Council that was approved. The final edition, and I have to change the forward, I need to adjust the list of contents and all of these things. That is not available yet, the final version, but the text is the one that you will find in this amendment proposals. Thank you. And if there is a typographic error, if there's some spelling things, I will correct that in the final version, but the text is the same. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. No problem, Renzo. Any other comment for Rodrigo? Very well then. Thank you, Rodrigo, for your presentation of this paper. And as Rodrigo said, we would like to urge our colleagues from Guyana and Suriname. Well, these are the products offered by the system. We know that they are not in English, sorry for that, but we could communicate with you later on to find a way to work together to support you with some similar products. Mario Verdugo, please go ahead. Yes, thank you very much, Fabio. No, regarding the information paper presented by Rodrigo Rivero from the Technical Advisory of ICAO, I wanted to mention that Oscar Medina and Santiago Cardosa had mentioned from Chile, in the sense that the certification, this test for certifications are an extremely important tool for the inspectors, so for new inspectors that the states require. Actually, states need experience, and they need the development of certification process at the highest level. On the other hand, the contribution by the regional cooperation system for monitoring of safety as RVSOP has been extremely important in the regulatory aspect, in the sense of the presentation of this guiding material in a work done by the panels from AGA. This is a work that has been very well taken advantage of, very well used, that has a very important technical significance for the states, because they have the states can continue improving their safety with all this information, with all this guidance. And that was my comment for the information paper by Rodrigo. Thank you, Mario. Well, we have half an hour for the meeting according to our original agenda, although we have been finishing a little before that all these days, but we have completed all the agenda items. But I had one last thing that I would like to discuss with you. Allow me please a second to get there. This is a summary of the discussions. I wanted you to help me to give your inputs here, giving your inputs or your contributions with regards to things that we might include here. Can you see? Can you see the blue sky with an aircraft? Yes, we see it very well. Yes, very well. Thank you. So in the summary of our discussions, initially we talked about the certification objectives and RST. In the meeting, the agreement was that the certification objectives, it is adequate to set them, in other words, but some states need to still update these objectives with regards to their certification plans. That's what Argentina, Colombia, Uruguay also mentioned something about this. So the idea is that I think that Venezuela also mentioned, and Brazil, to be able to update these targets. So here in this part, what we will have to do is we will communicate with you after this meeting to request this update to you all. With regards to the runway safety team, RST objectives, what we capture is that these objectives will be based on the mechanism that we will be agreed under the RASPA project. As I said, I think that we will be starting with this on August. The objectives is that this will capture not only the implementation of a new RST, but to see whether the ones that are implemented are effective. So that's what we have for the moment being. Now we are not going to set RST targets. We won't ask the states to do that, but we will work on the mechanism. And once the mechanism is ready, then we will contact you to set these targets or objectives. Do we have any comment? Please interrupt me if you want to say something, because I'm not looking at the list of participants, so I won't see your hands raised. So you can, if you want to say something, you can tell me. With regards to the priorities in the region, we said that the 4 priorities of the current AGA plan is the certification of safety, airport planification, ACDM, and safety in the runway. In the certification, the idea is to validate whether these are still the priorities, and to mention that under certification, logically, we have broad aspects like the implementation of SMS, even the implementation of the wildlife committees that we discussed extensively, the area of firefighting, rescue works, and the SMGSC. However, I wanted and safety and operations and aerodromes, and I wanted to ask you if anyone considers that a high-level priority should be added, any other high-level priority should be added to these 4 pillars. And when I mention high-level priority, I mean if there is any issue that we should or which must start approaching in this 3 years period. Let us know if that's the case. In the next slide, I show emerging aspects, emerging topics, that is under these 4 priorities. We would also include for the next 3-year period. First, we have ground handling. Initially, we were linking ground handling to airport CM, which is one of the priorities in the region, but we know that what will come from ICAO soon with regards to ground handling standards and methods recommended for safety. So that might be under certification. We will have standards and recommended practices regarding the new amendments, a priority in the region. As ICAO publishes new amendments, like with GRF, for example, we will be working with you as this happens to include a specific implementation work or to support implementation. And here I put also in with a question mark what we mentioned here, the use of drones in the airports, the vertiports as well, the high ports, hydroports, and all many other different aspects that we could include as emerging or prioritary issues in the region, like rescue, for example, emergency plans, or response to the emergencies. These are things that we should also consider as priorities for the next 3-year period in the region. We also mentioned about the training being a priority, and I put this as a individual topic, which because we will include this as a priority that is cross-cutting to all other areas, but it's very important regarding safety, the inspectors, especially because of the generational handover issue in some states. We need to see the possibility of complementing the training that are already being received by the specialists or the experts in the states. And there are some issues here that that I could note down from the conversation with Pepe. There are many others, but these are the ones that I recorded as the main ones, right? The ones that you see in the screen. With regards to the GREPECAS project, we mentioned that the projects 3 are still relevant despite the pandemic. Pepe, please go ahead. Yes, with regards to your previous slide, we also talked about ALACPA. We also mentioned ALACPA. I think that, I don't know how to define it. The structures of the pavements, do you remember? Maybe it's part of design, I don't know. Yes, remember Pepe as well. And that's actually, well, we invited ALAPA. They were not able to participate, unfortunately, but it was very important because the design of pavements as such, and correct me if I am wrong, the colleagues that are here, if I'm wrong, correct me. I understand that this part of pavement in most of the states, this is not done under the civil aviation authorities. I mean, usually the design is carried out by consulting firms or the airport operators. However, the authority, like ICAO stipulates, they should implement some generical or general parameters, like, for example, that the pavements should have a PCR stated how to interact or how to deal with the ACRs, and the pavement design issue specifically because it is something that doesn't have any direct impact in the priorities that we have discussed previously, the guarantee of safety in the state. This is something that we are working with ALAPA. They are supporting this in this, but we took this into account, not only pavements, but also visual aids, geometrical aids, planning. All of those are topics that are also important for the states. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Pepe. With regards to GREPECA's projects, I was commenting, I was saying that the certification and planning projects do not have a coordinator, but they are continuing, they are in progress. We will, well, the ACDM and the restructuring, we will share the survey to define the applicability, and we will take note of the need for more guidance material for the implementation. As mentioned by you, these guides should have a little bit more support for their implementation. And again, well, the parking lot topics, which are the topics that are there pending, but that we put them like in a waiting list, which is resilience that we mentioned, and adaptation to changes in the airport environment, which is something very current among airport operators, and the environmental sustainability. And this could be a good moment maybe to ask you, with regards to what we have listed here, if you want to, if you think that we should add anything else here for this is for the AGA focal points. Do you think that we should add anything else here to this list that I've made, the summary? Or in general lines, does this reflect the discussions we have had. Anyway, we will send you the final report for you to have it. But if let me know, please, if there is something that is not here and should be here. Go, please. Hi, Fabio. Yes. Look, I don't know if we can go to the last slide, but I think that we should have a mention of what Martolio Coitby with the RVS did, maybe in slide 5. That was pretty interesting as well. Just that. Okay. Let me see. I will put it here in this slide for SMS. Let's put RBS, sorry, approach. I will put it in red. I will change this later on, but yes, I will have it here. I think this is something that we should try to, well, to focus on more. As you know, ICAO, as they have an audit protocol with the protocol questions, it also has an SSB protocol. There are some questions that are in the AGA area. Some regions have made some progress on that, and I think that they could maybe share their experience with the others. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Yerko, thanks to you. Very well, then with this, I believe that on our part, that will be what we were expecting from this meeting, to validate some of the things we're doing, to communicate what the headquarters is doing, what we are doing in the office as well, and to kind of gather from you your needs. Of course, if you identify other needs later on, like for example, I know that our colleagues, I think that I mentioned for Guyana with the operations, the offshore operations, the oil deposits, maybe that might increase the interest in the design and operation of heliports. These are things, vertiports as well. We discussed this very briefly, but it's something that maybe might start knocking at your door very soon. These are things that we are writing down here and considering here to take them into account. Rodrigo, I don't know if you have any comment before we close from the SRV sub, maybe. Can you hear me? No, I just wanted to thank the presence of all our colleagues. Obviously, these are different meetings, different to the meetings that we have with the AGA focal points and the meetings that we have in the setting of the system. But I think that for most of the member states, the colleagues that participate, the focal points are the same colleagues that participate in the AGA panel, which is good in some ways, because that allowed us to eventually take to the panel discussions, I mean, effectively implement things that sometimes with the topics that we discuss, sometimes as technical aspects of safety, we can have these technical discussions, but in the panel, we can then take these, and that will allow us to amend or change a regulation, or making or preparing a guidance, some guidance material, and that becomes something that we can apply concretely in the state. So we have this as a vision. Well, I would like to thank the colleagues. I am here at your disposal as always. Those of you who know me, you know that I'm always here, always willing to help you with whatever you might need. Sometimes it might not be something formal, but also informal questions or questions. I don't know if my email is here or if it will be in the report, but most of my colleagues know what my email is. And for those of you who do not know me, from Guyana, Suriname, whatever you might need, I'm at your disposal for anything that you might have, a question or whatever. And for larger things, obviously we will need the authorization of the director and the management to support, but on my part, I'm available. I thank all the colleagues. I hope that it's been a fruitful discussion, at least to open our minds to see the things that we still need to work on, and to to be able to attack, to go to some areas to start doing things. Thank you very much, and a big hug to you all. Thank you, Rodrigo. And I would like to thank SILAC and Carson Fab for their support in all these work that we are doing with them as partners, and thank the interpreters, the administration team, Eva for the management, and the idea is not to double efforts, to PAMA has a little bit more scope maybe, and the possibility of working in different initiatives, but I think that this meeting can capture some topics that then we can take to the panel to develop them more in depth. Marilena from ASILAC. Yes, Fabio, just I would like to invite you next week to our webinar, Impact of Bird Strikes for the Aviation Industry, if any one of you is interested in participating in this event. Okay, thank you. If you could send me the registration data, Marilena, in this webinar, we will have a colleague from the office. He will participate. He deals with IAG. Accident investigation aspects, Mr. Lirio, he will share the regional statistics that we have in terms of that and bird strikes, and we will have some other colleagues from IATA. There it is. There it is in the chat box. You can see the link. Pepe, if they can send us an invitation with a link so our experts can participate, I would really appreciate that. Marilena, did you send like a mass mail for this webinar or not yet? Yes, we had already sent it, but I don't have, I will send it to you so you can resend it. Yes, I usually receive these emails, but I haven't seen it. I will send it back to you. I will resend it to you. Well, that would be all on our part. Thank you all again for your time, for your participation in the meeting. And as Rodrigo said, please be aware that all the whole regional office, we are completely at your disposal at any time, at any point, for anything you might need, for any support you might need, not only official, but also informally. We know that sometimes you run into challenges or things that do not necessarily need to be dealt with at a formal level. The ICAO is here to support you all. Thank you very much to you all. And I hope that you have a very nice week. Thank you. We have already had a photo. We can take another one. Help me, Eva, please, so that we can have another photo and I can share it with them. Very well then. 3, 2, 1. Okay, we froze. One more. Thank you very much to you all and have an excellent day.